Chapter 7b of Anticipations. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Christopher Taylor. Anticipations by H.G. Wells. Chapter 7b. These things, if they were merely the grievances of the study, might very well rest there. But they must be recognized here because the intellectual decline of the published literature of the English language, using the word to cover all sorts of books, involves finally the decline of the language and of all the spacious political possibilities that go with the wide extension of a language. Conceivably, if in the coming years a deliberate attempt were made to provide sound instruction in English to all who sought it, and to all within the control of English-speaking governments, if honour and emolument were given to literary men instead of being left to them to most indelicately take, and if the present sordid trade of publishing were so lifted as to bring the whole literature, the whole science, and all the contemporary thought of the world, not some selection of the world's literature, not some obsolete encyclopedia sold meanly and basely to choke hungry minds, but a real publication of all that has been and is being done, within the reach of each man's need and desire who had the franchise of the tongue. Then by the year 2000 I would prophesy that the whole functional body of human society would read, and perhaps even write and speak, our language. And not only that, but it might be the prevalent and everyday language of Scandinavia and Denmark and Holland, of all Africa, all North America, of the Pacific coasts of Asia and of India, the universal international language, and in a fair way to be the universal language of mankind. But such an enterprise demands a resolve and intelligence beyond all the immediate signs of the times. It implies a veritable renaissance of intellectual life among the English-speaking peoples. The probabilities of such a renaissance will be more conveniently discussed at a later stage, when we attempt to draw a broad outline of the struggle for worldwide ascendancy that the coming years will see. But here it is clear that upon the probability of such a renaissance depends the extension of the language, and not only that, but the preservation of that military and naval efficiency upon which, in this world of resolute aggression, the existence of the English-speaking communities finally depends. French and German will certainly be aggregating languages during the greater portion of the coming years. Of the two, I am inclined to think French will spread further than German. There is a disposition in the world, which the French share, to grossly undervalue the prospects of all things French, derived so far as I can gather from the facts that the French were beaten by the Germans in 1870, and that they do not breed with the abandon of rabbits or negroes. These are considerations that affect the dissemination of French very little. The French reading public is something different and very much larger than the existing French political system. The number of books published in French is greater than that published in English. There is a critical reception for a work published in French that is one of the few things worth a writer's having, and the French translators are the most alert and efficient in the world. One has only to see a Parisian bookshop and to recall an English one to realize the as yet unattainable standing of French. The serried ranks of lemon-colored volumes in the former have the whole range of human thought and interest. There are no taboos and no limits. You have everything up and down the scale, from frank indecency to stark wisdom. It is a shop for men. I remember my amazement to discover 3 copies of a translation of that most wonderful book, The Principles of Psychology of Professor William James, in a shop in l'Avenue d'Opera. 3 copies of a book that I have never seen anywhere in England outside my own house. And I am an attentive student of bookshop windows. And the French books are all so pleasant in the page, and so cheap. They are for a people that buys to read. One thinks of the English bookshop, with its gaudy reach-me-downs of gilded and embossed cover, its horribly printed novels, still more horribly illustrated, the exasperating pointless variety in size and thickness of its books. The general effect of the English book is that it is something sold by a dealer in bric-a-brac, honestly sorry the thing is a book, but who has done his best to remedy it anyhow. And all the English shopful is either brand new fiction or illustrated travel, of buns with a Grand Lama type, or gilded versions of the classic of past times done up to give away, while the French bookshop reeks of contemporary intellectual life. These things count for French as against English now, and they will count for infinitely more in the coming years. And over German also French has many advantages.
In spite of the numerical preponderance of books published in Germany, it is doubtful if the German reader has quite such a Catholic feast before him as the reader of French. There is a mass of German fiction, probably as uninteresting to a foreigner as popular English and American romance. And German compared with French is an unattractive language, unmelodious, unwieldy, and cursed with a hideous and blinding lettering that the German is too patriotic to sacrifice. There has been in Germany a more powerful parallel to what one may call the honest Saxon movement among the English, that queer mental twist that moves men to call an otherwise undistinguished preface a foreword, and find a pleasurable advantage over their fellow creatures in a familiarity with eftsoons. This tendency in German has done much to arrest the simplification of idiom, and check the development of new words of classical origin. In particular, it has stood in the way of the international use of scientific terms. The Englishman, the Frenchman, and the Italian have a certain community of technical, scientific, and philosophical phraseology, and it is frequently easier for an Englishman with some special knowledge of his subject to read and appreciate a subtle and technical work in French than it is for him to fully enter into the popular matter of the same tongue. Moreover, the technicalities of these peoples, being not so immediately and constantly brought into contrast and contact with their Latin or Greek roots as they would be if they were derived, as are so many patriotic German technicalities, from native roots, are free to qualify and develop a final meaning distinct from their original intention. In the growing and changing body of science, this counts for much. The indigenous German technicality remains clumsy and compromised by its everyday relations. To the end of time it drags a lengthening chain of unsuitable associations. And the shade of meaning, the limited qualification that a Frenchman or Englishman can attain with a mere twist of the sentence, the German must either abandon or laboriously overstate with some colossal worm-cast of parenthesis. Moreover, against the German tongue there are hostile frontiers. There are hostile people who fear German preponderance, and who have set their hearts against its use. In Romania, and among the Slav, Bohemian, and Hungarian peoples, French attacks German in the flank, and has as clear a prospect of predominance. These two tongues must inevitably come into keen conflict. They will perhaps fight their battle for the linguistic conquest of Europe, and perhaps of the world, in a great urban region that will arise about the Rhine. Politically, this region lies now in 6 independent states, but economically it must become one in the next 50 years. It will almost certainly be the greatest urban region in all the world except that which will arise in the eastern states of North America, and that which may arise somewhere about Hankow. It will stretch from Lille to Kiel. It will drive extensions along the Rhine Valley into Switzerland, and fling an arm along the Moldau to Prague. It will be the industrial capital of the old world. Paris will be its west end, and it will stretch a spider's web of railways and great roads of the new sort over the whole continent. Even when the coal-field industries of the plain give place to the industrial application of mountain-borne electricity, this great city region will remain, I believe, in its present position at the seaport end of the great plain of the old world. Considerations of transit will keep it where it has grown, and electricity will be brought to it in mighty cables from the torrents of the Central European mountain mass. Its westward port may be Bordeaux, or Milford Haven, or even some port in the southwest of Ireland, unless, which is very unlikely, the velocity of secure sea travel can be increased beyond that of land locomotion. I do not see how this great region is to unify itself without some linguistic compromise. The Germanization of the French-speaking peoples by force is too ridiculous a suggestion to entertain. Almost inevitably, with travel, with transport communications, with every condition of human convenience insisting upon it, formally or informally, a bilingual compromise will come into operation, and to my mind at least, the chances seem even that French will emerge on the upper hand. Unless, indeed, that great renaissance of the English-speaking people should, after all, so overwhelmingly occur as to force this European city to be trilingual, and prepare the way by which the whole world may at last speak together in one tongue. These are the aggregating tongues. I do not think that any other tongues than these are quite likely to hold their own in the coming time. Italian may flourish in the city of the Po Valley, but only with French beside it.
Spanish and Russian are mighty languages, but without a reading public, how can they prevail? And what prospect of a reading public has either? They are, I believe, already judged. By AD 2000, all these languages will be tending more and more to be the second tongues of bilingual communities, with French or English, or less probably German, winning the upper hand. But when one turns to China, there are the strangest possibilities. It is in Eastern Asia alone that there seems to be any possibility of a synthesis sufficiently great to maintain itself, arising outside of, and independently of, the interlocked system of mechanically sustained societies that is developing out of medieval Christendom. Throughout Eastern Asia, there is still, no doubt, a vast wilderness of languages, but over them all rides the Chinese writing. And very strong enough to be very gravely considered, is the possibility of that writing taking up an orthodox association of sounds, and becoming a world speech. The Japanese written language, the language of Japanese literature, tends to assimilate itself to Chinese, and fresh Chinese words and expressions are continually taking root in Japan. The Japanese are a people quite abnormal and incalculable, with a touch of romance, a conception of honor, a quality of imagination, and a clearness of intelligence that renders possible for them things inconceivable of any other existing nation. I may be the slave of perspective effects, but when I turn my mind from the pettifogging muddle of the English House of Commons, for example, that magnified vestry that is so proud of itself as a club, when I turn from that to this race of brave and smiling people, abruptly, destiny begins drawing with a bolder hand. Suppose the Japanese were to make up their minds to accelerate whatever process of synthesis were possible in China. Suppose, after all, I am not the victim of atmospheric refraction, and they are, indeed, as gallant and bold and intelligent as my baseless conception of them would have them be. They would almost certainly find cooperative elements among the educated Chinese. But this is no doubt the lesser probability. In front and rear of China, the English language stands. It has the start of all other languages, the mechanical advantage, the position. And if only we, who think and write and translate and print and put forth, could make it worth the world's having. End of Chapter 7b. Recording by Christopher Taylor.